Good afternoon, people. You are now tuned into Urban Voices Radio. I am your host, Brad Harrison. I got my man Sean Mucker in the building. What up, Sean?
What's going down?
And T. Marie, she's back here in the backdrop. You can't see her if you're on Facebook Live, but she's back here in the backdrop. She's recently gotten over the flu, so
we gotta keep her. Yeah, we gotta keep her.
I was thinking about keeping her quarantined this week. The flu, the corona, it's all kind of mashing in together. The tests aren't really particular yet, so we don't know. But she's good. She's in the building. What's up, T?
What's up?
And we have every week I say we have a special guest, and it seems like every week the guests get more special. So this week we have Tia and Sean Edwards, which are the owners of Fresh Distillery Company.
Yes.
Fresh Distillery Company. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the first black-owned bourbon distributors in the state of Kentucky, or bourbon company in the state of Kentucky, correct?
Yes.
And that's a big thing. Now, people, if you're listening from outside Kentucky, let me put you up on game. The best way I can correlate it is if you're familiar with California's marijuana culture, that's Kentucky's bourbon culture. So bourbon is everything in Kentucky. Bourbon is a big drink. There are, I don't even know how many. Do you know how many bourbon companies there are?
Hundreds.
Yeah. There's hundreds.
It's
an $8 billion industry.
It's an $8 billion industry.
Yeah. As far as bourbon companies, as far as I know, there are 2 black-owned bourbon companies.
Okay, we got one sitting in the building.
So when it comes to bourbon in Kentucky, much like horse racing, which is another big thing in Kentucky, it's been kind of limited to African Americans. It's been kind of shut off. I don't want to say shut off because I'm not sure, but it appears to be shut off from African Americans. But you two have managed to break through the industry, and you have your own brand, not just the distributing company. You have your actual brand of bourbon, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And we have a lot of bourbon sitting here on the counter today.
That you ready to drink?
I'm ready to drink. But
we about to toast it up a
little. But let's go back and let's get a little history.
Sure.
You guys are originally from the state of Kentucky?
Yes, I'm originally from Louisville.
Okay.
And I've been in Lexington since '96.
Okay.
Yeah, went to University of Kentucky. I'm from Lexington.
Okay.
And went to University of Kentucky. Tia is from Louisville. Like she went to Central.
We get a lot of Central.
We have a lot of Central.
We get a lot of Central.
Man, we have a lot of. You know what?
Central got a lot going on.
Look, I'm not a native of Louisville, right? But I've been here since '96. As long as you've been here,
as long as you've been native, you're adopted.
Well, look, I thought I was, right? But they told me that to claim Louisville, you would have to go to high school. That's the barometer, right? So,
I'm just telling you what to tap.
So we have a lot of Central High School people that come up here that have went on to do amazing things. Yeah. So Lexington, Kentucky has been home since '96.
Yes.
What made you two decide to jump into the bourbon industry?
Well, I'll tell you, we do a lot of traveling, so around the United States and across different countries, especially the Caribbean, and we did that. And everywhere you go, when you go and travel, you're from Kentucky, and they know 3 things about Kentucky. They know horse racing,
okay.
They know bourbon, okay. And you would think it would be basketball, but it's really Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's what they know. Seriously.
Are they still on that?
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
Big time.
Oh, yeah. You go to Jamaica, Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant is the largest restaurant in the country.
Hey, and you know what's crazy is that when I go back home,
not Muhammad Ali,
he
might be the 4th one.
Yeah, like as far as industry.
And a lot of people don't even know he's from Louisville.
Yeah,
a lot of people didn't know that. Yeah. But what amazes me is that when people from outside Kentucky come to Kentucky, people in Louisville don't even eat KFC.
Yeah.
People eat Indies.
Yeah.
Right.
In Lexington, we have Indies, we have Grimes, we have Richie's. Yeah. So.
Okay.
I didn't even think about that though. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because when you think of Kentucky, you really don't.
We don't eat.
You're right. You don't even think of okay, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Well, you know what? Let me
No.
clarify that because I can't speak for everyone. I'll say majority of the people I meet in Black Louisville don't eat KFC.
Right.
I think it's still a pretty big brand overall.
Oh yeah, it's huge brand. Yeah,
right.
Huge brand across the world. KFC is so. In doing that and traveling, people would ask those questions. So we would come back and we say, we need to get more in tune to what's going on in the bourbon industry.
Right.
And we didn't approach it as trying to be the first anything. We went about it, saying, okay, let's look at it. We're business people. Tia's has a professional, she's in sales, but we do own businesses. We own a general contracting company. We own a dry cleaners in Lexington, and we've owned other businesses.
Georgia Weezy.
So moving on up. So we've been in business. So in looking at the business landscape, we went about putting our pieces together. As far as to develop the. It's been a 3-year process. As far as almost 4 years in what we've tried to put together. And we went to Ireland and did a lot of research over there as far as their Scotch industry, their whiskey industry, and even some of their brewery industry, the gin industry, and Mexico with the tequila industry. So we get back and we found out that in bourbon, historically, pre-Civil War bourbon, a distiller was a job. So I know a lot of people talk about the different industries and how, especially Caucasians have taken over the industry, but that was a job back then. And so 90% of it was done by Black people. Okay. Master distiller making the bourbon, and whiskey was a commodity. And so moving into this, we discovered all this history and this information started coming out. You have the Near Screen Project down where he taught Jack Daniels basically how to make whiskey.
Come out.
And that's it's not like they just broadcast it, but it's a good story now, and what they're doing down there in Tennessee. So in Kentucky though, that just wasn't the history. Most people that produced bourbon were slaves. And so we went about the process of putting together a company, and we said, we'll put together the business plan and develop a team. We put together a team of people, and we went about trying to authenticate what we were doing. Because what we wanted to do something different, because there is ability to source bourbon. You can purchase bourbon, and you can put a label on it, and you can sell it, and that's okay.
I wasn't aware of that.
That's the way a lot of people enter into the market. So, and that's a standard for the market. Sure. There's no problem with doing that. We just want to do something different. Yeah. So we went about developing a mash bill to our taste, what we like.
And explain that to us non-bourbon. What is a mash bill?
Sure. So the mash bill is a recipe, which I can't say it because I was told by our team to quit telling our mash bill.
Quit telling your 11 herbs and spices.
I was just broadcasting the secret sauce, and they were like, hey, back that up. So no, basically your mash bill is the grains you use outside of the corn to produce the bourbon, because bourbon has to be 51% corn.
Okay. So that what actually makes it bourbon?
Yes, and it has to be aged in a new oak barrel.
Brand new?
Charred oak barrel. Usually charred for the flavor and for the, so yes, brand new. So that's the specifications for bourbon. And so I guess we looked at some of the other interviews you had, and a gentleman, he was trying to come up with a statement. It is that bourbon is a whiskey, but not every whiskey is a bourbon.
Okay, explain.
So basically, Tennessee whiskey is not bourbon.
So Jack Daniels is not bourbon.
No, it's not bourbon. It's Tennessee whiskey. Right. They have their own branding. That's their own label, because they have processes. They don't have to follow the guidelines that bourbon set forth. 98% of bourbon in the world comes out of Kentucky. And so as far as us putting the business plan together and the team together, we went about registering our company with the state, and we went through the process to, build a brand and a business and ultimately a distillery.
Did y'all get any backlash, any, flack when y'all decided to open up this bourbon business?
No, not really.
We received a lot of support. Now, of course, not everybody's everyone's not going to agree with what you're doing, right, and how you go about it. Right. But for the most part, we have received a lot of support, and we're very grateful for that.
And look, let me salute you guys, because one of the things that we try to preach up here, all three of us, is that we preach entrepreneurship.
Sure.
But on top of that, sometimes when it comes to African Americans, we tend to, now we're becoming, we've always been entrepreneurs, but we tend to stay in a box. Mm-hmm. So you'll have your soul food restaurants, or you'll have your cosmetologists, things like that. Yeah. But I'm listening to you guys, and you're saying dry cleaners, bourbon. These are particular businesses that aren't the norm in the Black community, and are things that we should be venturing into because we spend our money in those places.
Right.
Exactly. And that's what, I mean, that was the process. I mean, it's a business. I mean, we look at it as a business. We're business people. And having that mindset and approaching it, that's why we wanted to authenticate what we did. So we basically worked with another distillery, a craft distillery, and they allowed us to come into their facility and to do our process. So we had, we were recognized about 3 weeks ago from the state on the Senate floor of the state because we did something that we went into it not knowing, but we found out we are the first Black people in the state of Kentucky to produce bourbon that were not slaves.
Salute.
Really?
Salute. So in that history of all the history since slavery, there have been no Black people produce bourbon in the state of Kentucky that were not slaves. Also, we did it with a Black master distiller. There had never been a Black master distiller in the state of Kentucky that was not a slave.
Okay, then the school was on that.
So a master distiller is basically the person that oversees the process of making the product.
So it's like a barber. You have to have somebody with a certain certification.
Yes.
Exactly.
I had no idea.
It's not necessarily a certain certification. It's more so the skills, and the process to make the bourbon taste the way you want it to taste.
So it's like an overseer.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So
the chef. So like, think about it from a chef standpoint. You might have sous chefs and people, but the chef is creating the recipe. They're making sure the recipe tastes the same every time that it's delivered to you.
So Kentucky is so particular with bourbon. You're not just pushing out any type of product.
No,
saying, hey, this is bourbon.
No. And it's our product. That's what's so unique about what we're doing. And we went through a lot of different barrels to get this exact taste that we wanted.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an easy process. It wasn't like we got our mash bill together and this is it. We went through a lot.
Years.
To get this.
We've been at it for almost 4 years.
Yeah. And I want you to taste this before it gets watered down.
Okay.
Taste it before you get watered down.
So this is our cocktail.
This is a cocktail.
If y'all see this on Facebook, it's from the fresh
Bourbon Distillery.
I'm gonna walk over here and drink my bourbon.
I'm gonna show y'all.
Okay.
So we like to start with the cocktail because again, we are different. So the cocktail approach, which Sean can kind of explain a little bit more. Okay. I mean, we'll do the neat pour after we've tasted the cocktail.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So this is a fresh Gold Rush, and so you have a hint of the bourbon. It's a nice light cocktail, ready to move into the summer with it. It's a very refreshing.
What do you think? What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's real smooth. I like it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a bourbon drinker, but
this is this one is light. It's not very heavy. I can drink this entire glass.
I'm going to drink it.
Part of that is too that we have approach to a lot of people are not bourbon drinkers, and they can't necessarily deal with a lot of rye or a lot of heat. And so we start off with a cocktail. This is our new approach. So fresh meaning not so much not aged bourbon. It means a fresh approach.
Now, it's a new way to do something.
Yeah, it's a fresh honey and lemon.
Yeah.
Good combination.
This is good.
This is a real good combination.
It's a fresh. Yes,
it's good for sickness.
That's right. Yeah, for real. Yeah.
So is this how this bourbon will pour out of the bottle?
No, this is a cocktail.
This is a cocktail.
So
we made that up. We're going to do a neat pour. We will.
The neat pour means just the bourbon.
Okay, so is that your bottle?
That's going to be the bottle. We're waiting on production. That's why our bourbon will not be available to sell to the end of the year.
Okay.
And so we're waiting on the bottles to get produced and everything. But this will be the bottle. It's just
that's the shape of the bottle, just without the label.
Yeah.
We went about it. So in distilling it, so when you taste this bourbon, this is an interesting fact. You'll be tasting history. As we said in our announcement, we did an announcement. We thought we'd have 75 people come out with media and have that presence. Well, all of a sudden, we got 150 people, and we had to turn away 100 people.
The energy was amazing in the room.
That's a good problem to have.
It is
right.
And we actually turned away at least 70 people.
Yeah, really.
We run the event because the capacity was met in the building that we had it, but it was an absolute amazing night. And that's a support that we're talking about that we've been receiving because it wasn't just, this is not just a Black people's bourbon, and we want to make sure that's
That's
understood.
right.
This is a bourbon for everyone.
Yes.
And that room really represented that very well. We had a
Yes.
lot of people from the community that came out and supported us,
Yeah.
so we were really excited about that.
It's not a Black people's bourbon, but Black people, we expect you to support.
Exactly. Yes, please. We appreciate
Please
that.
do.
We're going to make this the official
Yes,
drink
it is.
of Urban Voice.
Well, and I'm gonna tell you though, when we do the neat pour, when we get to that portion of it, and like we told them at the announcement, because of the situation with us having a African-American master distiller, with us being the first people to produce Black people to produce bourbon in the state of Kentucky, you taste the history.
Yeah.
This had not been done, and it's gonna be good history because the bourbon's good. I mean, if you like the taste of bourbon, it's a very smooth bourbon. And one thing for sure about what we're doing is, while my wife's here today, is you'll see a lot of the female influence into it, because a lot of bourbon is built with men.
And it's it feels like a masculine
Yeah,
drink. but
yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you can tell it has a woman's touch on it.
Exactly. No, I'm saying,
I'm saying,
Yeah.
you can tell, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
'Cause the flavor.
because bourbon as a whole does come across as
Yes.
a masculine
But
drink.
the major markets that are increasing among bourbon drinkers are women and African Americans and millennials.
And I'm gonna tell you there's a guy here. He's a UK fan too, so he's right up your alley. There's a guy here. He owns a couple barbershops, but he used to rap. Well, he still raps,
Mhm.
and his name is Jay Alexander. He made a song called "I Love My Bourbon,"
Really?
and it's a
Oh,
great song, and it's made with I don't want to know the guy. I don't know the guy's name, but he's I guess he's a popular, what's the music here, bluegrass musician.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he had a popular bluegrass music, and it's a really catchy. Nice. I'm gonna turn you on
I'll
to it,
check
man.
that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's check that out.
Yeah, it's a good song. But this is great. Now I have a question.
Go ahead.
You said that you are the first Black people to create bourbon that are not slaves.
Yeah.
When slaves were creating bourbon, were they following a recipe? Were they actually creating the bourbon themselves?
What they were doing, some of them, it depends. Like, to be honest with you, there's not a lot of history around there. I mean, there's not a lot of history available.
We expect that to
there, and even if it was, it's probably destroyed. And with prohibition,
Right.
they, and then some of the companies, just to be honest with you, they just don't want to talk about that.
Right.
They don't want to talk about
Right,
their
they
origins.
don't want that label.
Yeah,
Right.
and so we, that's just how it is. So a lot of it was, it's like everything, it's kind of like the Jack Daniels process. Uncle Nearest, he invented that. He invented
So he actually
basically
invented
that process. Yes. And so Jack Daniels was 9 years old, during that, when he first came to work under him. He was
Really?
30.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uncle Nearest was 30 and he's
Why
9.
did they pay Uncle Nearest family?
Hey, that's a question for them. But like the process, as far as the way it was done pre-Civil War, would probably, even if they didn't develop the mash bills and the recipe, it was probably enhanced by what we do. We slaves had the ability, because they were going to be doing something every day, they had the ability to come up with better techniques and do it better, than, because they're doing it, So if you look at it, I mean, we don't know, but in speculation, I mean, we cooked all the food, and it is a recipe. So,
Yeah.
Okay, now question. Is there bourbon? I'm not really familiar with the process. Is there an age limit to bourbon? Does bourbon have to be aged a certain amount of time before it's able to be called bourbon?
No, those are the standards that I gave you. They have to be 51% corn, has to be in new charred oak barrels. And no, it doesn't have to be a time as far as age, but in order for it to be Kentucky straight bourbon, that's a 2-year process, 2 to 4 year process. And I had to look that up exactly, but it's either a 2-year or 4-year process. But that would be able to, where you can put straight on the label as far as just Kentucky bourbon. Yeah.
So straight means
It's just been aged at least 2 or 4 years.
If
So
it's
it's
straight
either
bourbon.
2
It'd
years
still
or
be
4
bourbon
years.
without that.
Yeah, it still be bourbon. It's just straight.
Right, there's a lot to this industry. Huh?
It is.
Yes.
So how much research did it take before even getting into
Oh my gosh.
creating a bourbon?
We've done a lot, and we're still
lot.
doing it. We're doing a
Yeah.
lot of market research right now, but it took a lot, because you unearth stuff and you find out that, there's it's a huge industry. Like I said, it's an $8 billion industry.
Yeah.
And it's just not about the product and what we consume. Kentucky State, University of Kentucky, they have distillation processes because the chemists and there's jobs that are created that, you know, in the industry, and we can take advantage of that, you know, as far as our kids.
Oh, you just gave me a business idea while you're sitting here. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, I have a new business idea.
Cousin Sean, don't forget about me.
Okay, so question, is there going to be an official launch party or launch date surrounding this bourbon?
Our next event will be our groundbreaking event when we're actually going to start the construction of our distillery. Yeah, we're building a pretty large distillery. So
that's what I was about to ask too.
Yes.
In Lexington?
Yes.
Yeah, to be in Lexington.
Why not Louisville?
They live in Lexington.
They just live there.
We'll be up real lot. We'll be up real lot.
Right.
We got a ton of family here. Tia's got a ton of family here. I got family here as well, you know. So I think that we will break ground hopefully in the summer. We're working on some contract details, but we're building a 40,000 square foot facility. So it's not a small facility by any chance.
So it's going to take a little time to get that out.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Yeah.
Along with that facility, y'all can create like storefront stores where they can go purchase the liquor. Y'all going to distribute it within the.
We're going to have a distillery tour
Okay.
in our distillery. It will be a store to purchase merchandise, but we're also going to have a concert venue that Sean can kind of go in more detail about.
Really?
We're going to play some music hall inside the distillery.
Y'all doing it big.
Yeah.
So it's going to be nice.
So it's going to be nice.
Yeah. We got approval from the state. We went through a process. We couldn't make our announcement until we went through a KBI process, which is Kentucky Business Incentives. So anytime you hear, like up here would be like Passport or any of those big projects, the Y that they build in the West End, you know, all those big projects usually go through a Kentucky Business Incentive process. So they can get tax benefits and tax incentives for going through that. So we went through that process with our Chamber of Commerce and with our city. And so when we got approval at the end of this year, we said, man, we're going to make our announcement Black History Month, you know, for what we're doing. So the project, it will include a music hall, distillery tours, and a function space. So you'll be able to have your wedding at the distillery.
Y'all like Tyler Perry in the game. They said, look, we're not going to use another distillery. We're going to build our own. And we're going to have a venue here for concerts. Who do we connect with in Lexington? Chris,
DJ Chris. He's in Lexington. He's a big
concert promoter.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah. I know him. I'm familiar with him.
He's online.
He does a lot of concerts. I'm very
Chris Day.
Yeah.
So Lexington, man, shout out to this man.
He did a lot of concerts. He just, I think he was involved with the No Limit concert.
Yeah.
He just had
To some capacity.
To some capacity.
We were attendants. It was great.
Yeah, and I think
we was in the church. We got there.
Yeah.
Now look, when I was there, I posted on my live. People thought I was crazy, right? When you tell people there was a cloud of smoke.
Oh my God. It was ridiculous.
I don't smoke, and I walked out there hot.
Hold on. I don't smoke either, but this is my thing. This is one of the main reasons that I probably don't smoke. Because we sitting beside people, and I'm like, okay, I don't smoke, but I know what weed smells like. That's not weed. I don't know what you're smoking, but that's not weed.
That's what weed just smell.
I don't know what that is right there.
It grown folks.
It wasn't 1995.
This is a compound creation. Something has been made.
So question, where did the name Fresh come from?
Basically, us going through a lot of names and thinking of how we were going to do it and what we were going to do. And we really just want to be disruptors in the industry.
There you go.
And so the fresh comes from a fresh approach, a fresh idea as far as in the industry. And disrupting the industry is so crazy because like our consultants that we meet, we have a consultant, financial consultant. He's 45 years in the industry. He was Jim Beam's CFO. Okay. And he's been in the industry. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Everything in bourbon's old. Old Forester, old this, old that, old that. He was like, and then you all come with fresh. He was like, man,
it's so
that's
simple.
All right.
It is so simple, but it means so much.
It does.
You know, so it's just a fresh approach to the industry, you know, and not so much disrupting it, meaning changing up a whole lot of things. That's why we wanted to be authentic in what we did. You know, we went to a conference at University of Kentucky. They had a lot of the distilleries there, a lot of the master distillers there. And the authenticity of what we're doing is basically, I mean, we made the bourbon. I mean, we made the bourbon right
We didn't
here.
buy it from anybody.
It's right here.
Sean,
Yeah.
she created the name, bitch.
Let me tell you something.
Go tell us, bro.
Y'all tell me. We understand because
I don't know about that.
we
I don't know
complicate
about that.
things a little bit.
But understand this: happy wife, happy life. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
I live by that philosophy.
All right, we got a few more minutes, man. We got to get you guys out of here. I'm sorry, but I have a final question.
Yes.
Lately, well, not lately, but just period. I'm big on marriage, especially black marriage,
Yeah.
because in our community, unfortunately, marriage is
Oh yeah.
Not
Yes,
celebrated.
it's
Celebrated
it's not
as much.
popular, right? I hear dry cleaner, I hear sales, I hear all these different companies. How easier was it to obtain these goals being married?
Well, I mean, I can speak to it. I think that it is easy. I mean, it's something that we both can focus on as long as we agree, is the direction that we're going to go. I mean, it's not 100%. I mean, we always have discussions about what we're going to do and setting goals. But I think that's really important. I mean, for us, we've been married it'll be 10 years in November. And a lot of what we do purposely is we do go on a trip every year for just us to celebrate our marriage and to try to figure out what we want to do and set goals for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
Watch out.
And ultimately, it is what you put into it. So regardless if it's business or pleasure, it's what you put into is what you're going to get out of it. So, a lot of the attack against the marriage is not so much the enemy attacking, it's us operating in the enemy's will instead of operating in what God has for us.
Amen.
And so that's where we try not to be.
Absolutely.
So we try to guard ourselves against that and
Yeah.
try to stay in God's perfect will for our life and what we're trying to do, especially in our marriage and our family and even in all of our relationships. So that's our philosophy. I mean, that's what we.
That's fresh. That's fresh.
They don't let
No, but,
nobody in on their marriage.
But the beauty of this also, I see that we got Mama in the background. You know
Mama
what I'm saying?
back
So we
Can you come
incorporate.
stand in front of the camera for me, Mom?
So we incorporating the whole family, which
Yes.
is
Yes.
it's beautiful. It's a beautiful
That's
thing.
right.
Yeah.
Now, whose mother?
This is my godmother.
Your godmother.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but she actually is both of our godmothers now because he
indeed.
tried to take away when we got married.
You're supposed to.
Yes.
And now I'll tell you the truth. Everybody, this is Joyce Beatty, everybody in Lexington and Louisville who's black probably knows Joyce
Who went to
Beatty.
University of
Because if
Kentucky.
you went to University of Kentucky, she ran the scholarship program.
The William
I'm
C.
gonna
Parker.
get you back
The
up
William
here.
C. Parker program.
Yeah.
Yes,
How many
indeed.
years?
She- For 36 years. She
Woo.
retired already, but when you see
Anybody
somebody
got money
that
UK,
was
she
black
goes,
that went to University of Kentucky, you ask them if they know who Joyce Beatty is, they'll be like, she saved me. They'll be,
See, y'all like the Obamas. Mama,
Oh,
Mama
man.
ain't the one.
She the ringleader. What you talking about? Tia, Sean. She probably introduced them.
the funny story is we actually met at a gas station
Yeah.
while I was headed to Bible study.
yeah.
And he was headed to get a haircut, and we talked for an hour. I missed prayer meeting.
Yeah.
And after that, after our first date, we were together.
Yeah.
Well,
Really?
when you said Bible study and he didn't run,
Yeah.
you might have had somebody special.
Hey, and look, and I'm gonna tell you, people like me, not originally being from Louisville, I can say this. So there's this big rivalry, I guess, between
Oh, yeah.
Louisville and Kentucky.
Yes.
So when I moved here in '96, the image of Lexington was hillbilly.
Yeah.
Right? So, but now in one of my businesses, I'm in Lexington every day, well, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
So I'm in Lexington every day, and I'm actually a fan of. I
So
like
what?
Lexington.
Yeah. Let's
He said, wait,
What?
what?
And they say it because I guess
I'm
in
a traitor.
I'm in the Hamburg area, so I like it
Yes.
out there.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and I'm
it's
like,
awesome.
but I had an image that there weren't black. There's a lot of black people in
lot of black
Lexington.
people.
It's a lot of black
A lot.
people that graduate from the University of Kentucky
Yes.
too.
But
Oh,
just in
yeah.
the city, period,
Yeah.
and it's a cleaner. Look, Louisville will get on me for this.
Yeah.
It's a
but-
cleaner city.
You trade up there nice, man. I swear.
Look, it's a clean. Look, when I say that to elected natives, they say you ain't been over there on Broadway.
In some way, I mean, it mimics Lexington's a smaller Louisville, but it's
Right.
more, compact.
Yeah.
And so both cities, have a lot going on. I
They
think
do.
that people underestimate, the I guess living in Kentucky.
Yeah.
There's value in that. And we know that you go to other places. There's a lot of places that people talk about, oh, this is great, but you won't really live there.
Yeah.
You know, but there's value in living in Kentucky, especially in Lexington and Louisville, for moving around, for family, for what you get.
Y'all be rolling up. Look, I'm in Lexington. I see like black people rolling around in Range Rovers and Benz.
Tell them what y'all put on
You trying to make sure they make it back.
I saw what they pulled up here.
But we got to get you guys out of here.
No,
but
we
quick,
appreciate it.
give people
Where
they can reach you guys, where they can follow you on social media.
Yeah.
On all the social media sites, just follow us at Fresh Bourbon. And that's the
Can I
best
have one
way
more
to get
bourbon?
us.
You can have this.
At Fresh Bourbon.
There you go.
And
I'm
you
glad you
can
like
follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Right up his
at
alley.
Fresh Bourbon.
Yeah.
Fresh Bourbon people, make sure you follow them.
Please do.
The first black
Make sure we
bourbon.
support them.
What is the official title? Is it Bourbon Creator? Distill?
It'll be distillery. So like because announcing the brand and getting your license operates you as a business. So they announced it as the first African-American owned bourbon brand as far as a distillery in the state of Kentucky.
So Fresh Bourbon Distilling Company.
Yeah.
So when you buy a bottle, you're buying history.
You're buying history. Yes.
That should be the slogan.
And
That's not the slogan. We gotta get that package.
Good. It's good.
And it's good.
Not just history.
Nah,
it's
it's
history
definitely
that's
good, though.
And we're talking
Yeah.
about it because we're here, but part of it is, and I can't wait till the end of the year as far as when we really launch our marketing plan. There's so much to it.
It is.
From just the different angles as far as not just the African American approach, but just the fact that people really need a way to enter into the bourbon industry. So we say all the time, start fresh, finish wherever you like.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sound like
So thank you.
So this particular drink I'm having, this cocktail, this is fresh bourbon mixed with.
Our special recipe.
Yeah.
Oh,
you can't
Did I see a soda? Did I see a soda or something?
We splash
We
it with
topped it
Sprite.
with Sprite.
We topped it with
Yes.
Sprite.
Yeah, man, quit trying
But
to
it's
get
a
the
mixture.
recipe.
It's called a
Yeah,
fresh
it is.
gold rush.
Yeah.
But we do want to pour you a neat pour. We want you, especially if you're a bourbon drinker, we want you to taste the neat.
We want you to taste it neat.
Let's
But
get it.
you guys gotta get some other people in here, right?
A
So we
neat pour?
gotta-
You want
No, we have time for a neat pour. What's a neat pour?
Give me your other glass.
So you want
You give me your other glass. Can I see?
Oh, let me see these back.
You gotta take the ice out of it. Can you
I'll
take that
just
out of
pour
there?
it. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's the cocktail. Here's his.
Well, you know you're rich when
Look,
you.
I have a birthday party being at 4. I hope I make it. No, man.
Yeah. So, tell them a little bit about before you take your first sip.
Okay, before
See,
you
you know you're rich when you're drinking bourbon at 12 o'clock. In the
I'm gonna tell you.
So before you take your first sip, you want to kind of nose it a little bit.
You want to nose it, so you want to smell the.
Listen up in here.
Right. It smell like alcohol. Look. It smell like alcohol. I let y'all get this.
Okay, so before we take the first drink, you want to
Yeah.
nose it a little bit?
Yeah, you want to
Nose
nose
it.
it. You want to nose the bourbon, so you want to smell it.
Yeah.
And then,
It's a good smell, too.
yeah, it's gonna be a little different. It's gonna be very very smooth as far as your taste. So the first thing you want to do, because you had the cocktail, is just take a little bit and
Swish around a little bit.
Swish
no,
around.
just a little bit though.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, just so it kind of gets your mouth prepared for the tasting of the bourbon.
Well, that had me drunk at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
You gotta pace yourself. Pace yourself.
I can drink this straight.
Yeah. So that's the whole goal. The whole idea was to create a product that was not heavy as far as burning, not a lot of rye in there, and it's not a lot of heat going down, but it's a very smooth taste.
But it's
And
still
so
at
then go ahead
95
and take
proof.
a sip.
It's still
Yeah.
95
But
proof.
don't
so you're not
play,
gonna
yeah,
lose that.
because it's 95 proof.
Can I lock it
Yeah,
back?
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm going to let him get drunk. I'm going to sip on mine.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have
Well, strong right there.
Yes,
Put a burn on your chest.
so
Swear to God. Woo.
in drinking it,
But it's not a burn.
No,
no, 95
that's the
proof.
key.
Because we want to make it like that for people that want to drink it on some rocks, or if you put in a cocktail, it's not so watered down that you can't taste the bourbon.
Yeah, that's why she told me to get rid of my ice, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm going to need my ice back.
Fresh bourbon, people. I don't know if I've ever took a shot of bourbon to the head like that.
Yeah.
But no burn.
No burn.
Yeah, no.
Nah, it's
Great taste.
Yeah, I got to roll with this.
And it's a very good sipping bourbon. You know, you can sip it.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
sipping.
today's
You know,
culture,
You
if you like a cigar, you know, have a cigar with it. And
Yeah.
So how
just
long
chill
did
out.
it take with you guys tasting.
How many different? Did we go through?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
A lot. How many y'all spit out and say that's not it?
It was about a year process of doing that. So that was
a lot. Because we wanted to get it perfect. It's very important. The taste for us was very important.
This is good.
We didn't want you to get something that's trash.
Right.
You know?
No doubt.
We wanted to have it's a reason for you to come back and buy another bottle.
Yeah.
It's fresh.
Right?
Like we tell people all the time, and I guess we had a news article that went nationwide. I mean, they publicized it from Houston to New York.
I believe that's the one we saw.
Yeah, and part of that, what we tell people is, the bottle and the story, and what we're trying to do as far as African-American approach and the fresh story, it'll sell the first bottle, but what's in it will sell the second.
Okay.
Because once you taste it,
you're gonna want some more.
I'm definitely going
Look, we had a couple guys up here that started a Bourbon Distillery Co. What are they? Distribution Co.
Yes.
Did you check
Legacy. Yeah, we saw the interview.
We saw the interview.
That's awesome.
That was great.
And they've done a lot. Yeah, we watched the interviews, and they're doing a good job in trying to break into the market as far as distribution.
Definitely.
That's a tough one. There's a lot of big players in that market, and I think in the next week or so we'll have a conversation with them.
Okay.
We've been communicating online a little bit.
I'm glad. I'm
Shout
glad. They're really good. Those are
That's how
two
you
good.
collaborate.
Two good guys.
Everybody can eat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, we thank you guys for
Thank
coming
you for
up.
having
The
us.
door
Appreciate
is
y'all having
always open.
Thank you.
Let
We
us know
hope
what
we're
time.
invited to the
Right.
lunch party.
We absolutely
We'll
will
be.
be at the
For sure. We'll make sure we
so
have
we'll
you
make
on
sure
there.
you're all there.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, thank you.
We'll make sure we have you all on the announcement. We'll make sure you all can come out and enjoy the process. It's going to be great. We got some big things coming up that we can't really go into right now. But as far as what we're trying to do for the state, it's
Can
going
I
to
say
be
something
awesome.
like look forward to something coming out next month for our opportunity
Well,
to
you already
support
said
us?
it.
Yeah. I kind of gave him an eye like, is it okay, babe? Too late. As it's coming out, babe, is it okay?
You're not talking about this in the range.
But no, you guys are great. You guys need your own reality show. You guys are
Our
great.
daughter, we have an 8-year-old that would totally take the show. So we're going to.
Actually, we were approached about that a while back, and we put
Because you
the
guys
brakes
are
on it.
more than just bourbon. I'm listening to you
it is,
here, and it's family, it's
Georgia
God, it's
Wilson.
love, it's
Yeah.
business.
Well, look, George and Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Louisville Jefferson, the Lexington Jefferson. That's what we're
Yeah,
going
we
to
actually have 3 kids. We have a 24-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 8-year-old. But the 8-year-old thinks she's the same age as the older one.
Yes.
There
So
it goes.
So how do they feel about the bourbon business?
excited,
Very
very
excited,
excited. We're just afraid that the 8-year-old.
And this is what it's about. You are leaving a legacy and
Oh,
a
yeah.
business
That's right.
Yeah,
for your kids.
Sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
How you think Trump got where he's at?
Yeah.
His
Right.
daddy.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, the 16 million.
Yeah.
That's right.
So-
at 21.
Talking about
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
I know, right?
All right, we gotta get you guys out of here. We got some more guests coming in.
Thank you
Yeah,
guys.
we get
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
that.
come up with every night conversation on it.
Oh, before we take a picture, can we